our City Council meeting for Monday, June 11th. It is 5:01 and I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor Hibbs let me know that she'll be joining us a little later. She had a previous engagement. And first off, our agenda. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at that, I'm assuming? Any changes or additions we need to consider? If not, then I would entertain a motion. Councillor Jacobson.
I move we adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. And then our May 28 minutes. Those have been reviewed by everyone. Any revisions? Councillor Jacobson.
I move we adopt the minutes of May 28, 2018 as presented.
Thank you. No other input? We're all good? All those in favor? Thank you. And then council mailbox items. There was some minutes from community groups and boards and commissions there to review. Any questions or concerns on any of those? Councillor Connick?
I would so move we adopt council mailbox as presented.
No one else? All those in favor? Thank you. That works out well for time-wise because we've got a guest here, Donna Tana, who is the team lead for community mobilization and as a consultant contracted to Alberta Transportation, is going to present some information to us. Welcome, Donna.
Thank you, Your Worship.
That unit there may have to be turned on. There's a button on the... Perfect. Wonderful.
Well, thank you so much, Your Worship.
Yours.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, and I want to thank Mr. Pettibone for working with me in my schedule and his and yours to be able to get me here. It's a distinct pleasure. And thank you too to CAO Gowdy as well for affording this opportunity. Part of the Office of Traffic Safety, we're part of Alberta Transportation. We're not bridges and roads, but we do traffic safety. And if I may, Your Worship, ask the question, has a representative of the Office of Traffic Safety been to your council at all, ever?
I wouldn't know if ever, but certainly there has not been with this council. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Previously with the traffic committee, we did have the city. I think we did have a member of traffic safety from Stellar.
Oh, yes, okay.
My apologies, I don't recall his name, but he attended several meetings, so has some of our agendas.
Awesome, thank you very much. I'm now your liaison probably for the next 5 years, so we'll get to know each other very, very well, and I'm at your disposal for a whole bunch of things in relationship to traffic safety. Kind of give you a bit of overview, and Mr. Pettibone said he pushed the buttons for me, so that's pretty awesome. Bottom line, I'll just give a brief overview tonight, and I'll be mindful of time. I've got it logged at 5:05. We'll talk to you about the Office of Traffic Safety and the Vision Zero that the office has adopted. The province hasn't yet, but we have. Talk about our community mobilization program, key resources for you, and Office of Traffic Safety Creative for you and for your community. So that's the agenda. The Alberta Road Safety Statistics just came out for 2016, so we haven't had time to synthesize them yet, but this is for, oh no, I gotta shut that off. My apologies. Guess I'm buying donuts. Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. I apologize. I had it shut off. The 2016 stats are on their way. The 2012 12 to 16 stats talk about the population and talk about the number of road users on the licensed drivers on the road. So bottom line, between 12 and 16, our population went up 9.8%, and our number of drivers 8.9%, and our registered vehicles 7.7%, so the trend is up. And highway traffic volumes were 8.4%, and I'm sure you're experiencing that anyway. I came down Highway 2 today in this amazing wind, and the highway is very busy today. And so we're getting busier all the time. You can't just spend 5 minutes and you're going to get where you want to get. In 2013, the number of licensed drivers were 2.9 and change million. 2016, we do have that stat, 3.1 and change million. So there's a lot of licensed drivers on the highway. The biggest issue we have is the social cost of collisions, and in 2015 they've estimated the cost between 4.6 and 10.3 billion, and that includes the cost of health care and long-term disability and impact on families and so forth. The next slide gives you kind of a graphic about the combined fatal and motor injury collision rates. I will say that in just a cursory glance today, the 2016 stats indicate that it has dropped some more, which is very nice to see. But you can see where it peaked in about 2007. 2008, the Office of Traffic Safety came into being with consultants, and we're the only ministry in Canada under transportation that does have a consulting wing that deals specially and specifically with traffic education and community engagement. And of course in 2016 it's down to 63.4. It's down, that's awesome, we want to keep it rolling down. And we talk about good practices in the Office of Traffic Safety, because if we move to best practices, that denotes that we've got it right and we're perfect, and nothing's ever perfect about this. The Office of Traffic Safety has adopted Vision Zero, and Vision Zero has come out of Europe since 1992, and they have reduced injuries through their different practices and through their different ways of road building and construction within municipalities on highways. And the basic premise for it is 0 deaths and 0 serious injuries on Alberta highways, because the premise of it is that it doesn't accept that fatalities and serious injuries are inevitable or acceptable. In some places in Europe, tractor trailers are not allowed at certain times of the day to do anything but convoy. They cannot pass each other. We're working with a lot of industry, because that's part of my portfolio, is municipalities and industry within the province, to limit camp buses on certain times of certain highways, to limit rig moves, and a lot of industry is doing that on their own, and that's a really good sign. Highway 40 right now by Grand Prairie, they're working on that right now, because we've been on that highway in the last little while, it's very congested. And we want to strive to create a system in Alberta that safe decisions are made, and mistakes are not punished with death or serious injury. So that's the premise of Vision Zero. It's been around a long time, and you'll be hearing me talk to you more about it, providing you with more information as it comes. And the beauty of it is that your municipality can do with it as you so choose. So we don't dictate anything like that to you. If it works for you, and you can do some education initiatives around it, or if you happen to be building a street or road within your municipality and have opportunity to make it safer through some of these techniques, absolutely, but it's not a mandated issue. The Safe Systems approach talks about safe road users, so we're all in optimum condition to drive. We're not impaired in any way, and that includes everything from legal to prescription over-the-counter medications to prescription drugs to illegal substances. So we want to be safe when we get behind the wheel. We're not impaired through physical limitations, etc. And of course, safe vehicles. The vehicles are getting safer. All of you know that are driving newer vehicles. It's very much safer within the province, and I don't know if you've had opportunity to see the crash test video of, I think it was a 56 or 57 Bel Air with a dummy in it that crashed at, I think it was 45 or 50 miles an hour into the barrier, and the engine ended up in the back seat, and of course the dummy died. And then they had the same type of weight vehicle, newer, with the same crash results, and the driver lived because of the crash cages and so forth. You buy a new vehicle, like my husband and I just did a little while ago, brand new Silverado, it drives for you. It scares the heck out of you when it's giving you all these warning bells about what's going on. So safe vehicles can be good. Of course, safe speed, that's an engineering issue, but our highways are built to the way the speed and what the engineers to be safe, and what the engineers deem to be the appropriate method. And speed does kill, and we know that. And again, when I look at the 2016 stats, and I will send them to you, Ross, for dissemination, it does talk about speed is not helping us And then safe infrastructure. So how are we designing the roads? How are we designing ditches? How are we clearing ditches? Where are we building fence lines? Where are we putting power poles? Those kinds of things. So if you do slide off the road, you slide off the road. You don't slide into an abutment. And that's kind of the holistic view of the safe system. Now our community mobilization team, I'm lead of 5 other consultants that, and we're province-wide, so we have no areas, no defined spaces. We all have different sectors that we look after, and that's what we do. Our outcomes are shared responsibility, so that we're all talking traffic safety. We want to build community capacity to address the safety priorities, and that community capacity is in whichever way that the City of Lacombe defines it. Not how we define it, but how you define it. And of course, enable collective action. So there's not just a committee made up of enforcement in certain groups, but it's committees and teams made up of everyone in the municipality. So that's kind of our ever-large mandate, and I guess informally we're introducing the province to itself, because as more and more initiatives spring up, we're able to tell you about what's happening around the province, and you can say, geez, you know what, I think that would work in Lacombe. Can we adjust it a little bit? Our key resources for you as the City of Lacombe are, of course, us as our community mobilization consultants. And were you aware of the Alberta Traffic Safety Fund? That is a grant that is available to you, to your nonprofit groups in the City of Lacombe on traffic education initiatives. It is not a matching grant at all. Anyone can apply for it, including the municipality, or if part of your protocol is that you're the banker for certain groups, that is awesome too. And the small grant is $10,000 and under, the large grant is $25,000 and under. And there's 2 calls for service per year. We just had our spring call. Now I happened last week to be reading your transportation master plan, and it's very well done by Stantec. But I can see some very cool ideas in there for traffic safety education and some of the initiatives you have in there with pedestrians, roundabout. There's a very cool way to be able to make that a main Lacombe situation if you put one in, or you've got one that you want to teach people how to use it. And there's some other education pieces, especially for some of your more dense roads, and working with your, I believe, 3 education, post-secondary education units here, so that how they can reduce traffic, or how they can also work with you and your enforcement teams and your Lacombe police. So I thought it was a very good plan. I enjoyed reading it, actually. And then and you can get a hold of the Traffic Safety Fund at that email that's up on the screen. And of course, our website is saferoads.com. What we offer you in the next slide is we've done a lot of big campaigns in the province, and once the campaign is over, the creative artwork goes away. It disappears somewhere. And so the director in the Office of Traffic Safety said, why don't we bring this out and make it available to municipalities, nonprofit groups, and so forth. So part of what I'm going to show you is some of the creative that we have. There's more coming online all the time that you can use. You'll have the email address, so you can just email into our marketing person. You can put your logo on it. You can put numerous community logos on it if you so wish, and you can use it any way you desire. Posters, bus wraps, bus stop wraps, city vehicles, coasters, whatever you want to do with it. We're happy that you're using it, and some municipalities already are. So the first one, in keeping with your transportation master plan, is about pedestrian use, and the campaign was When Eyes Lock, It's Safe to Walk. There's 3 separate looks here for green eyes, blue eyes, and brown eyes, and you can use this at any time you want. So you don't have to pay for any of this, just perhaps the printing, and sometimes a grant, if you apply for that, will cover printing costs as well. So the next available creative is intersection safety on the next slide, and it's quite popular in the rural municipalities. However, there are some urban municipalities that are using this as a reminder. So unsafe left turn and Range Road rolling stop, there's a bit of a humorous twist to it, but our problem is rolling stop signs and stop signs that are not being adhered to. The fatalities are happening in the rural areas, the injury collisions are happening in the urban areas, and it's a very serious problem. So these are able to be used at your discretion. The next slide talks about, the left one is the City of Cold Lake. They use the When Eyes Lock to cover their bus shelters, and they are, and a bunch of other logos on the bottom as a community effort, and it's going over very well. I'm going up to see it tomorrow in Cold Lake, and Spruce Grove just called us and asked us if they could use some of this inside their buses as part of the community engagement process. Keep Your Ride Hitched is to do with rodeos and events and agricultural events, but SAIT is using it for their governor's ball. So in other words, leave your ride overnight. We won't charge you parking. We won't tow it. We'll leave it here. If you come back the next day, it's here for you. And we just signed Chance Butterfield of Pinoka. I'm sure you're aware of who Chance is. A great, great young man. He's our spokesperson for Keep Your Ride Hitched. And he's already tweeting. You can catch him on his tweets. And he'll have his trailer wrapped within the next few days on the back with this creative. So next year we'll use his horse. This year he's got to use our horse. So that's kind of how it goes. Sorry for the Flames logo for those of you that are Flames fans, but that's where we debuted. This was in December last year at the Calgary Flames game, not at the Knights game. So our contacts are, as you can see on the next slide, you can get a hold of me, the creative files. That is your email address, and your administration can do that, as can your community groups. For the community mobilization, in other words, how you get a hold of me is this email right here, and I'll answer it 24/7. Some mayors and council have tried to test that out about 11 or 12 at night, and they've got a response, so it's kind of fun just to throw that out there as a challenge. We try and get back to you within 12 hours or less. So that's my commitment, that's what I look after. The Traffic Safety Fund is that email, and I encourage you to apply for a grant, or I encourage you, if you want, or your administration or teams want me to come back down here and help you throw some ideas around for it, happy to do that, because that's part of my role for you. And other questions are Office of Traffic Safety at the bottom. That's our main email address. The other thing that we have, and I've given Mr. Pettibone some examples of these are my business cards. They're probably the biggest in Alberta. But that is some of the creative that you can do with this message. All you have to do is put City of Lacombe on the bottom. Of course, we use these at a lot of municipalities are using these at events. So in other words, when they get their tickets, they put this on the dash and everybody knows I'm parked for the night. I'm not going anywhere. So it's pretty cool. And then there's the intersection information as well. So you can use them in any fashion. So Your Worship, that concludes my 15 minutes, well 14 3/4, but I will stand down at your discretion for questions, sir.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions about it? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. The direction of the Alberta Sheriffs, initially they were kind of integrated with the traffic safety of the RCMP, or traffic division RCMP. Are they separating and going to become more prevalent, or I've heard some different directions of what that's moving forward?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Ross, I'm not exactly sure because that's a Solicitor General ministry. I have heard the same thing you have. I think at one time they were integrated under the Joint Traffic Safety Initiative and so forth. So I can't answer that question for you, but I tell you what I can do is I have contacts in Solgen. I can get back to you with that.
It's just a general.
Yeah, no, I can find out if that's the trend or what they're trying to do.
Thank you for that. One item I've had input from several members of the public about is the cable barriers on Highway 2.
Mm-hmm.
Could you give us a little bit of the stats of how that's working and how working or not working or whatever the case may be?
Your Worship, what I can do is look into the 2016 stats. I have them in my office. I just haven't had a chance to synthesize them. And when I do, I'll take a look and see where those statistics are, and I'll send them to you. I don't know if when police attend those kinds of collisions, if there's a box that they can tick off that specifically notes that cable barrier, but there may be some anecdotal, or there may be, we can pull crash statistics along Highway 2 where those barriers are, and so I'll talk to the statisticians. If it's not broke up, we'll see if we can break it up for you.
Very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Glodson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I just have a question regarding infrastructure. I was at a seminar recently, and they went to a session regarding autonomous vehicles and how prominent they're going to be in the next number of years, and there's some infrastructure things that have to be done. Is the government addressing some of those issues on our highways at this time? Are they looking at what needs to be done to allow these vehicles to travel safely?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Don, I know that the General Manager within the Office of Traffic Safety attends a lot of these meetings Canada-wide on the whole autonomous vehicle. And I know they haven't made any decisions yet, but she's very involved in it, so I can look and see if there's any timelines, and I can get back to you with that to see if they've got a ballpark or what they're doing. So She's just away this week, as a matter of fact, at another meeting down east, so I'll get some information for you on that.
Because I know there's going to be some cost for the municipalities when these vehicles do come in. And I'm not sure anybody's really sure exactly what needs to be done, but there will have to be something done to allow them to operate properly, so.
Yeah, you're right, Councillor Don. I know that they've had some mishaps, I guess. They had one in Vegas where the operator was inside the vehicle, but when it got rear-ended, it didn't know what to do, so it just stopped and jammed up traffic on Las Vegas Boulevard. That didn't sit too well. So I know there's a lot of kinks and bugs to be worked out, and will it come here first? Will it come to the west where it's colder? We don't know. So I'll see if I can get you a roundabout, kind of statement or something to that effect, what they're doing, sir.
Yeah, I know they indicated it's like a 20-year project.
Yeah.
But people like, for example, my granddaughter, she's not planning to get a driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to be part of this new generation where you just have a car license and you phone up a car and it comes and gets them. So it's going to be a totally different attitude towards transportation.
I think so, and I think as an emerging senior, I'm getting there. I think it'd be awesome. It'd give me more autonomy. I wouldn't have to worry about my driver's license being gone. I could just call up a vehicle and away I go for groceries or go to the theater and have some independence. So I think it has some very useful applications. And I've also heard the 20-year window of opportunity as well yet too. So, but I'll see if I can get some generic information on what's happening.
Yeah, I was just curious what the provincial government was doing towards that, and if there's going to be any assistance for the municipalities for their expenses that they're going to have.
Fair enough. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Donna. Councillor Hoekstra has a question for you as well.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. So the slide that you were giving stats about the increase in population and number of drivers, then at the bottom it says the social cost of collisions in Alberta was estimated between 4.6 billion and 10.3. I guess I just wouldn't mind a clarification about why you're comfortable with that very broad stat.
Your worship, through to Councillor Hoekstra. I think it's a formula that they use based on the amount of collisions and based on the amount of Alberta health spending. I believe it's a formula. I can check that because I'm not a statistician. But it is high only because we're seeing more catastrophic injuries and more catastrophic collisions. And the move to roundabouts and to traffic circles is in direct support of what's happening in Europe, have been proven with the European stats to decrease the severe collision catastrophes with the human body by a very significant way. So it ends up being a fender bender as opposed to a T-bone situation. So we've had a lot of bad collisions this year. We're at 7 or 8 motorcycle deaths already this year. And with increasing healthcare, I think that's where it is. It's the logarithm that they use. I wish this was down to $100, just for parking, to get a Band-Aid. I really do. But it is a logarithm, so if you'd like more of the background on it, I can definitely do that for you. My pleasure.
I think that's all the questions that, or comments we had for you. So we certainly appreciate you probably finding time in your schedule for us.
I appreciate you fitting me in, and I always have time for the municipalities, so I look forward to getting to know you all over the next 4 or 5 years. And again, if you need anything, let me know, and congratulations on your master plan, seriously. It is a very good document, so I think there's lots of cool things you can do for education in it. If I may, one last thing, Your Worship, I forgot to mention it, is the month of September is Back to School Safety Month. We have kind of designated that. So we're respectfully asking municipalities to consider perhaps proclaiming or perhaps letting us know through my email what your city is doing for traffic safety to schools for the month of September. It could be anything from increased enforcement or police and your peace officers out there at intersections. Just let me know about it. You don't have to create anything new, but just let me know so that we can feature you and tweet about it and put you into our database. Thank you, Your Worship. I apologize for that late note.
Not a problem at all. Our administration has a very good working relationship with all of our local schools, so I expect that will be 2 owners to put that together and let you know.
Awesome, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you. My pleasure, thank you.
The next item up is Bylaw 459, and that will be presented by our Acting Corporate Services Director. Go ahead, Diane. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Bylaw 459 is to formally establish a code of conduct bylaw governing the conduct of the city councillors as required by an amendment of the Municipal Government Act. To date, councillor conduct was addressed locally through our council policy of ethical conduct for members of council and the procedural bylaw outlining ethical conduct standards for the members of council. This bylaw has to be passed by July 23rd as per the MGA, and it outlines a very specific set of topics that are minimum for this bylaw. And it talks about the representation of the municipality, the communicating on behalf of the municipality, respecting the decision-making process, adherence to policies, procedures, and bylaws, respectful interactions, confidential information, conflicts of interest, improper use of influence, use of municipal assets and services, orientation and other training attendance. And it also outlines or recommends to outline a complaint system and how complaints can be made and the methods by which they're made and the process to determine the validity of the complaint and potential sanctions for non-compliance. For that, I recommend that administration reviews the citizen request and response policy to ensure that it will comply with this bylaw, and that any changes that are recommended of that policy will be brought back to council for approval at a future meeting. At this point, we're asking that council give first reading to bylaw 459, and if there's any questions or discussion, I'm willing to accept that now.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. Do you have any questions or comments?
Well, we like to think that any vision zero goal is realistic, but we know it's going to take time. And we always think that the state's using the budget. But our aim is to reduce it.
Councillor Jacobson?
I move that we give first reading of Bylaw 459.
Thank you for that. Before we vote on that, there was a question or two from from 2 councillors rather, and just want to let the public know as well that this is not generated because of any particular instance. This is an MGA requirement, and with the time such as it is, that we need to be moving along with them. That's the only thing that is prompted it at this time. So, with that in mind, all those in favor with Councillor Jacobson's proposal, or motion rather? None opposed, thank you very much. And the next item up under unfinished business is under infrastructure services and public works is the infrastructure services building and curbing rink repairs, and I believe that Director Thompson will walk us through that item.
Mayor Creasy, for you tonight is a recommendation from administration to award 3 projects to Scott Builders. Project 1 is the replacement of the infrastructure services building roofs at a cost of $165,000. This is approximately $50,000 over what's included in the 2018 capital budget. The reason for this is a portion of the building roof was originally scoped to include patching and repair only, but after review by interested proponents during a rainy day, happening a rainy day that day, a substantial number of new leaks were discovered, and the recommendation from them was to expand the scope to include the full roof replacement over patch and repair spot leaks only. So that increased the price of that item. The second project was the expansion of the infrastructure services washroom facilities at a cost of $168,000. This is under budget by approximately $20,000. And this is to address the current demand for the washroom facilities at infrastructure services, especially in the peak summer season. The third project is the replacement of the curling complex roof envelope at a cost of $366,000. This work was originally unbudgeted for the 2018 capital budget, and it is approximately 4.6% over the latest estimate provided by a separate roofing contractor, which is about $350,000. So this roofing contractor was a third-party contractor that is not part of the Scott Builders team, and so the pricing does align up with our expectations on that project. So the city issued a request for proposal to solicit pricing from interested contractors. Contractors we reached out to after the bid process indicated that they were currently operating at capacity. And as a result, Scott Builders was the only proposal that we received for this project. However, as I've indicated before, their pricing is in line with our expectations and in line with the original budget pricing we received from contractors prior to releasing the RFP. However, it is difficult to foresee what pricing would have been under a more competitive environment. Administration further recommends that Council approve a 5% contingency for the repair of any existing conditions that cannot be visually inspected prior to destructive investigation. It is not suspected that hazardous materials will be a concern, but Scott Builders pricing does exclude any hazardous materials abatement. In the event that they are discovered, the contingency would be used towards the extra abatement efforts. The total cost of these three projects with contingency is $720,000. Administration will prepare a formal request for cost sharing to Lacombe County for the curling club roof replacement. And based on the existing agreements per capita apportioning, and if approved, the amount would be $119,000 or 31% of the project cost. And I'm open to any questions.
Thanks, Director Thompson. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess all due respect is that our facility operators, they inspected the roof, and obviously we were provided from information previously of pictures that were taken like December 15 of PVC damages and so forth that were on the curling rink roof, and there were repairs done on the other two roofs of obviously the arena and the swimming pool. So anticipating forward some questions of all due respect, I don't think it should be on the onus responsibility of our facility operators to check the roof, but in the same respect, I think that the onus of responsibility should be to have the people that know the specific material that was on the curling rink roof to know how to inspect it, I guess. Because, you know, we're going to be scrutinized that why wasn't this done in 2015? And that's what's going to come forth to council as questions from citizens is what I anticipate. So if it's not that visible, if it's that type of roofing that they're not knowledgeable in, then that should have been inspected by individual roofings that know that particular product of roof material, I guess. I'm just looking forward to what we're going to have to deal with.
And I think that certainly is a concern that has been expressed through emails, I'm sure, to all of you, as it has been me. But I think that RCAO has some good background that will help justify why the order of events went the way that it did.
Sure, so I had, excuse me, I had sent out a bit of information last week, I think, about some of the timelines. So when that damage did occur, there was an inspection by our arena staff, for sure, as well as our insurance adjuster. We didn't feel that it was lacking any damage. We had some of the same concerns, and so we had asked that the adjuster come back again. He did. He brought at that time a certified roofing inspector with him to do the inspection. That's the report you're referring to that had the documented damage of the PVC vents, that sort of thing. His opinion was that there was no damage noted. Now, certainly, subsequently, damage has been what we suspect is damage from that hailstorm has arisen. We are currently in a situation where we've been denied coverage, but we're still working with our insurer to look if there's other options for us.
Thank you.
Councillor Jacobson?
So is there a possibility that some of this cost can be recouped?
It's currently our insurer has closed the file. However, we have the roofing materials manufacturer coming to do a separate inspection to help us advance the case that there is actually an obligation of the insurer to provide some of this cost. I don't want to commit that yes, we're going to be able to do that, but actually I think it's tomorrow at 9 a.m. that we have the manufacturer of the actual materials coming to look at it to give us an opinion if they believe the damage was caused by previous hail.
Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So just one last question to do with the rink roof. So we have seen these photos, we have seen the report. I'm just wondering why that hasn't been shared publicly, because I too, like probably many councillors, are getting a lot of questions from members of the public, and it is easier to explain to them when they can see things like that rather than just having that kept internally. So is there a reason why that we haven't released that publicly, like for example in the agenda package?
Nope, there would be no reason why I wouldn't release that publicly. Certainly, if you have those questions, that report is available for you to use as well. But if that's something the council would like to see us publicly release that report, we certainly, there's nothing in there that would prevent us from doing so.
Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I'm just questioning a bit of the timeline about contacting Lacombe County for their contribution to the roof, because I was at a meeting last week and they said they already approved that. Is that possible? It is possible? Okay.
I would probably defer to CEO Gabby in terms of the specific timelines on this project.
So that they have approved it. It's just approving the final number. When they approved it, it was they approved the concept of sharing in the cost. Without your approval tonight of the actual project, the number just wasn't finalized yet. So
if I could ask, is it your concern that if by some miracle we did recoup some of these monies, what would the impact be with the county? Is that?
No, not necessarily. I was just curious how the county was a step ahead of what I'm reading here. I was just curious.
Fair enough, and that was simply a timing issue. They were contacted by our administration proactively. They had a council meeting coming up and it was discussed then and was in fact released in a county news release. So, Director Thompson, the other roofs that you mentioned there, the arena roof, of course, being the largest roof there, what was the coverage on it? Was it totally covered or partially, or how did that work?
The barrel roof? Typically, what happens with the roofing work here is we get coverage based on a depreciated value. So as the roof ages and goes through its life, let's just say it's halfway through its life, we get half the coverage for the remaining life. And so the arena roof would have been on that same basis.
I think actually in that instance the roof was covered as part of the had been already budgeted for under the arena project, and then was instead covered through insurance on a non-depreciated asset for this one.
Thank you for that clarification too.
Councillor Jacobson?
I just have a question, want some clarification on the RFP and how we were unable to get more than one quote back. Can't speak for everyone, but other than the FCR roof replacement, the other two, the washroom expansions and the building repair, that was approved in our capital budget, correct? So we knew that was coming, right?
That's correct, yes.
So now again, I'm not too familiar with how commercial tendering works, but is there an optimal season for tendering? I mean, if we knew this was approved, why did it take so long to get out? Now we've sort of missed the season for construction here.
I mean, the reason that it took so long is because we were short-staffed, and we continue to be short-staffed in the departments that develop and release these tenders. That's the short answer there. Would we have gotten more bids? I'm not sure. We certainly would prefer to see more competitive market. This is within our expectations of the pricing. However, without having a competitive bid, we really don't know what the lowest possible price we could get for the project is.
So, to clarify, the short answer was we didn't have the staff to get the bid out on time. Okay. So we anticipate down the road though that will it'll be a lot easier then with more staff.
Yes, we have staff hired for those positions, and we are typically well ahead of our colleagues in getting work out. So that is something we've actually been quite good at in the past, about getting work out in a timely fashion. We certainly want to do it to get back to that.
Okay, because I guess just then as a fault to that, with the way the schedule works for council for the approval of the capital fund or projects for the year, does that ideally give administration in a perfect world sufficient time to put tenders out? So in January, February, so you're not missing that time. Does that need to be looked at, or is this just kind of a bit of a hiccup this time?
It's a bit of a hiccup this time. Certainly our goal actually is to get, when we can, get firm pricing even ahead of the budgets, so that when we're presenting numbers to you, they're actual numbers that you can rely on. Just this time, like I said, because of some of the turnover we have.
Thank you.
Sure. So the mayor had just asked me to mention, we are also moving to multi-year budgets. This year, our capital program actually is predicated purely on design and tender packages, so we are going to be able to release those ahead of time and have real pricing for you going into 2019. So.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy, and I'll try to get through this one. So I'm still back at the whole insurance thing. So there's that 2-year limitation. And so I was rereading, the adjusters reported that there was no damage. So what's to say that they'll always do that, and then if that 2-year window is lost, and I feel like, should we have some recourse to, because they go up there, we trust that they assess the damage correctly, and they say there isn't any, and then there is. So what did we pay the premium all these years? What is our recourse as a consumer or as the client?
Certainly, if there was obvious damage, say that we had noted, then we would not have let the issue progress as it had. Of course, we would have continued to fight for it. Given in this instance there was no visible damage and it has shown up after, that has been our assertion as well, that we reported that there was an incident that there could have been damage from. It has now turned out, in our opinion, that there was damage from that incident, and thus we did all the right things, so that we are continuing to advocate on that basis. It hasn't been successful thus far.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So then also going forward, can we spell out a little bit more, how things have changed now, so that won't, repeat, because that's unfortunately an expensive lesson. So what has changed now so that we can try to avoid that in the future?
So certainly, we've talked internally about that. It's when there's no visible damage, it is tough to say we're going to catch it every time. But on some of these higher valued assets, that we would bring in an independent third party inspector to do that work for us and just verify that there is no damage. That's what we'll be attempting to do using the manufacturer's representative. Of course, if we can get them to say, yes, this is damage from hail, it appears to be a year or two old, to us that's a very strong case to say, well, this should be covered.
So I'm getting the sense that there's a bit of reservation awarding all 3 of these contracts in one go, and there's nothing to say that we can split them up. But if you would prefer to seek some additional input on the roofs, I mean, that's an option. I think we need to weigh the time factor along with the pricing and whatnot to see if we're going to perhaps save enough money to make it worthwhile, but just throwing it out there, that's certainly an option should council wish to go that way. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Councillor Booth, I don't think we have a choice. Work has to be done. You can't start a current season without, well, with the roof leaking. But I mean, I guess we're kind of questioning the process and how we could have avoided this situation, I guess is what the discussion is. Because, sorry, bring back the farm, you deal with adjusters, you don't agree, you compromise, you negotiate, or you don't sign it off, and so forth. I think that process needs to be reviewed. But I guess now just a question more directed to Director Thompson is, how many RFPs went out? It just seems kind of like, I think out of Shandos, Tricon, Shunda, so forth, many of the options available, to only have one respond seems, yeah, I know it's into the construction season, but it just seems like there'd be your Goodman Roofing or something. Like, it just seems like one return just seems kind of, I'm not used to the construction side, but it's, I thought I would have anticipated more, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And we certainly would have liked to have seen more. And so we, when we released tenders, we, in this case, there's one RFP went out for this collective project. And then we directly advised some contractors we've worked with in the past, and you've listed a few, just to make sure they know this project is posted, and then they can view it and look at it and evaluate whether they want to bid on it. And so we did that. Went through the process, received one bid, and then we followed up and indicated and asked, what was anything in the process, what happened, why did you choose not to bid? And that was the feedback we received. It said after reviewing the project and reviewing their own current workload, that they were at capacity. And one contractor did indicate that private commercial building development is keeping them busy enough that they're not seeking other types of projects within the construction window that we're looking at right here. So unfortunately, I can't comment anymore in terms of the specific business practices and why someone would have bid or not bid. Certainly, we'd love to see more bids. It gives us more certainty around the costing. We did receive, or we did when we bid these, or when we budget for these projects, we do typically reach out to contractors to get an idea of what these things would cost. And so the pricing we see here for the capital budget, as well as for the current club roof, is based on that third-party estimates. And so for the roof, the Curling Club roof, they provided a budget estimate of $350,000, and so the bid of $366 is in line with what you typically get for a tender estimate, like that less than 5%, which is pretty accurate. And then same with the roofing work at the infrastructure services building, that is still in line with what we would have expected for those costs based on that third-party estimate or quote from a third-party contractor. So, like I said, we would love to see more bids for sure.
So just to be clear, the roofing estimate, that is from an alternate roofer that is not the recommended proponent. However, the estimates that we received ahead of time were actually estimates provided by Scott Builders, who is now the recommended proponent. Is that correct?
We received estimates from Scott Builders for the washroom expansion portion of the work. The roofing portion of the work was from a specific roofing contractor, and that was used to formulate our budget estimates for the 2018 capital plan.
That's good. I just have that out the open, so it's clear for everybody. Thank you for that. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So just one more last question with the RFP. So is it typical that you do bundle these together like that? Because they do seem like they're not really related to each other. I guess one is on one facility, but one is on another facility. It's involving a different style of roof, I believe. So like, is that typical practice to bundle them together like that? Or maybe in future be better to split those? Would that be perhaps more attractive?
So it is always a decision that you make. Sometimes it's better to bundle because then you're getting the general construction, the general contractor services of one contractor. He's going to go and get his liability insurance for one job and mobilization for one job. so there's some savings. However, when there's divergent pieces of work, typically we would split them out. In this instance, the value is if you look at the overall value of the project versus how much of those general contractor services, I think the general contractor services, the oversight, would be a significant part of the job. And one of the big driving factors was that we wanted to get the project out, and it's much easier for us to run one RFP than 3 concurrent RFPs. So just from a capacity standpoint, we did bundle these projects.
Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I just had an overall general comment to make about the infrastructure services building. I think it's, it's unfortunate that we have to spend over $300,000 on that building when that building has been slated for replacement for many, many years, but it just seems we continually push it back in the 10-year capital plan. And I think going forward, we have to really try to find a way to stop pushing these big projects back, because $300,000 this year, a couple of years from now, another $300,000, or a couple of years from now, another $300,000. It's by that time, we could have put that towards the new building. So it's just an overall general comment that got to try to find a way to stop pushing these back somehow.
Thank you for bringing that up, Councillor Connick. You may like to know that the CAO and myself had a very lengthy conversation on that same item this afternoon. I share your feelings, but yeah, there's certainly no easy solutions for sure. Councillor Hoekstra?
Well, I'd like to make a motion that council directs administration to enter into a construction contract with Scott Builders for the infrastructure services washroom expansions, infrastructure services building roof, and the Freightliner Curling Club roof projects with a 5% construction contingency at a maximum estimated cost of $720,000, $140, I can't even say numbers tonight, funded through a combination of the MSI capital and general capital reserves as described in this memo.
Just for clarity, Director Thompson, is that 5% included in that grand total of 720, or is that on top of the 720?
That is included in that $720,000 number.
Thank you very much. Any additional comment?
I do have an additional comment. When you were saying there's some hesitance to bundle this project together and use Scott Builders, the part that would be pulled out would be the infrastructure building, and then that would be delayed because, like Councillor Ross said, the roof has to be done, and I guess I would want to speak on not delaying the renovations over there, because as a woman, we saw that we saw that building, and it's not very desirable to be working in that building. So I would definitely want to endorse the renovations being completed sooner than later over there.
Thank you for that. Just to be clear, at no time did I suggest that we not use Scott Builders.
Fair. I did.
Okay. Just put that on the record. We're all good? All those in favor? Yes, thank you very much. We've got a shorter item there, so we're just going to jump down to the second item, to Bylaw 400.15, the rezoning of R5 to C1, and I think that Director Thompson wanted to speak towards this, to clarify this item.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Council gave first reading to Bylaw 400.15 on at its May 14th regular meeting, and set the public hearing for June 11th today. Subsequently, administration made application to local paper to run advertisements for 2 consecutive weeks. And we also sent mailouts to all property owners within 60 meters to meet requirements of the Municipal Government Act. However, staff discovered that the advertisement for public hearing was only included in 1 week of the newspaper. Since the advertising did not meet the minimum requirements of the MJ, the public did not have adequate notice to make a statement tonight. As such, administration is recommending the public hearing not proceed tonight and be rescheduled for June 25th, 2018.
Thank you for that, Director Thompson. Certainly an unfortunate event. Hopefully this does not happen again in the future. Thankfully we had a fairly understanding proponent of this directly affects that was quite understanding about this. Any questions there? Councillor Connick?
No, I'm prepared to make the motion that council reschedule the public hearing for Monday, June 25th, 2018 at 5:30.
Very good. All those in favor? Yes, thank you. So the one everybody's been waiting for, our 2018 through 2021 strategic plan. And let our CEO Gowdy speak to that item.
Yes, tonight I'm happy to present to you the third draft of the strategic plan. We're hoping that it is final or very close to final. Following your approval or approval of an amended document tonight, we do plan to take this through a graphic design process that's going to make it a much more publishable document and something that's a little bit more attractive. We of course didn't want to go through that without getting your final approval of the content first. So you have had two prior chances for a cursory review. This evening we are looking for a more in-depth review. If there is items that you want changed, we'd like to hear that. Following your previous reviews, we did have an internal process administratively where we all went through and ranked sort of the difficulty, the time it would take for each task, each deliverable outcome, and the degree of organizational change that would accompany the task. Then we went through and tried to schedule those in a way where we thought it would be achievable within council's term. The majority of the work would be achievable within council's term. And have, I guess, laid out a plan to do just that, using our existing capacity within the organization, and what we think is achievable. So we also did some work to refine the performance measures identified in the strategic plan. The intent of your objectives was certainly not modified, it was retained, but some of the measurable outcomes were combined, expanded, or refined to better align with council's vision. Now certainly, it is, I think it was our expectation that we would, after 3 months of working with you, or 6 months now having worked with you, we had a little bit of a better feel for what your desired outcomes for each of the objectives were than the facilitator that was given only a couple of days to get to know council. So if there is things that you're missing or that the wording you preferred in the old strategic plan, I have it here. I can certainly raise that and we can go back to any, change it however you'd like. So I guess I would propose that we would go through sort of goal by goal, and if council has on each page something that they'd like to see changed or a priority to be modified, then we'd be happy to do that unless there's a different way that you'd like to go through this evening there.
It certainly sounds fine to me to go through it page by page. I mean, there's, I don't know, is there 130, 40 pages, something like that? It won't take that awful long. I expect there won't be changes to each and every page, but I think it's appropriate for an important document like this to have everybody have their fair chance to address whatever revisions that they'd like to see.
Then let's begin. Without further ado, so we have stripped down a little bit of the document. We wanted to make sure that it was something that would be portable, that people would actually refer to. So we've removed a bit of the backgrounds. There was a discussion on integrated planning, a letter from City Council that was actually written by the facilitator of the thing. And so we've gotten really down to the meat of the strategic plan. So we'll start out with the council strategy, which goes through the vision, mission, and values. We have not changed the vision statement, we have not changed the mission statement, and we have not modified the values.
You're not going to read our vision statement?
The vision statement as it reads, growing from our historic roots, the city of Lacombe is a vibrant, thriving, and welcoming community.
All right.
So moving to the next page, what is now section 1.2, which is council's commitments to citizens. And so these are your, what council all agreed would be the highest priority items, and certainly the things that that citizens are heard during the campaign and that they're looking to see action on, I think. So So we've not changed these high priority commitments. They remain the high priority commitments that were identified by council at the session itself. Any questions or concerns?
So I did have a question. I don't know if it's important who, but it would come from one councillor with the colors that were in here do not reflect the orders of importance as they were outlined later. And I think those are going to be cleaned up with the final draft as far as the colors to make them make perhaps a little more sense. So the red and the white here do not are there just for differentiation, not for orders of importance.
That's correct. These are your high priority commitments, and one has not been identified as higher priority than the other. These are just your top priorities here today. But the colors are an issue with the blue and the blue. So moving forward, we're on to priority goals and key strategies. There hasn't been significant changes here. I'm sorry, did I skip over sustainability plate colors? I'm sorry. There was no changes there.
I would just encourage anybody just to take your light or hold up your hand or whatever is anything as we go through. That way we'll make this as speedy as possible. Is that fair?
All right. So moving on, we have the sustainability pillar of governance. The first being open and accessible government. The high priority item you've identified under section 4.1 is to make the work of council more accessible. So the desired results there, of course, are for more accessible government. You're hoping to achieve those through live streaming of the video, which of course we already have, as well as user-friendly council documents. Any questions or comments on section 4.11?
Councilor Hoekstra? Sorry.
I was, thanks, Mayor Creasy. I was curious about the lead role piece at the bottom of the page. Is that going to get filled in yet down the road, or?
So in the final document, we certainly will be internally assigning responsibility for the lead roles. In the actual public document, we probably won't be identifying lead role because it would all just be CA.
Councilor Connick?
Sorry, just an overall comment. Our MVP is not an overly old document. And yet we're considering a revision in 2020 already. No, I'm just throwing it out there. I thought it kind of jumped out at me because I thought that document is not that old. But I guess in keeping with our current strategic plan, maybe it needs to be looked at. That's all.
So we're not anticipating a full-blown redo of this item. This is just an update, is it not? Or is it not the same thing?
So what we had heard, certainly during the strategic plan, was that there was some concern from council on some of the items within the MDP. We didn't actually get into what those were, and so one of the things that we would be doing through this process would be to solicit some of that information as to where you did see some concerns or room for improvement. I wouldn't have anticipated a full-blown MVP, redoing the MVP, but if there is specific areas of concern, that's what we wanted to find out and then try and address that through this process.
Our legislative coordinator brought up a good point and suggested that is linked to our ICFs as well, so perhaps it needs to be current within a certain time period too. But I don't think it's a problem having on here.
They need to both be current and matching, but I would say that the primary reason here was just the request of council during the session to have a review of the municipal development plan.
This is as long as it's understood, because I don't think it was our intent to have a full-blown review of this document. Is that a fair statement? Accordingly.
Moving on to 4.12, maintaining relationships with citizens and regional partners. Excuse me. The desired results, of course, here we did add in some language about focusing that this is about both the relationships between neighbors and with our regional neighbors. So it's inter-community and it's also intra-community. We do have update the nuisance bylaw as one under this section. So that currently is highlighted as a high priority item, as is review the land use bylaw with respect to redevelopment. Improved reporting is item 4.13. This is where we talk about key performance indicators being a goal. We've heard that from council a number of times, that would allow us to be doing some monthly reporting on key performance indicators, and so that is a high priority item under this section. Under fiscal prudence, which is 4.14, we have two high priority items. The identification and consideration of alternative revenue sources, the desired result, of course, of lower reliance on property taxes, as well as reviewing and setting service levels for programs and services that the city provides. So we've got a number of measures at the bottom there. Any comments or questions on fiscal prudence?
I did have one. I realize it is identified as a low priority, but develop forward-looking property taxation principles with refer to what?
So if I recall from the session, it was a specific goal of council to be able to look to a view of the future where we had prudent property tax increases that aligned with community growth as well as inflation, that would make us a community of choice for both business and residents in the future. So I think the forward-looking was about looking to the future and where we could be if we're able to maintain that fiscal prudence over a number of years.
Which we're doing now, just to continue and how that would look in a few years. Okay, correct. Okay, fair enough, thanks. Councillor Connick?
Sorry, Mayor Creasy, my apologies, I was texting a client and I missed the last. Can we go back one for a second on the reporting? Sorry, this is just me, and I'm the only one that can really speak to this is the mayor himself. Once upon a time, we had monthly reports from the directors and the CEO. I know it speaks to quarterly reports. I can only speak for myself, and maybe the mayor can comment on this. I really enjoyed the monthly reports. I'd love to see administration go back to that. I don't know if that's something you want to speak to, CEO Gowdy, but it was really nice to get that monthly report and we know exactly what each director, what they were doing within their portfolio and what the people were doing within their portfolio.
So I'm happy to comment on that. We did review the request for monthly reports. We felt that the development of the key performance indicators would be something that would be able to provide you that ongoing reporting. And then we would also be providing ongoing reporting on your strategic plan outcomes. To provide monthly operational reports, in my opinion, is a blurring of the lines between council and council's roles and administrations, in that council is then viewing in on what staff are doing below the CAO, and certainly on an operational standpoint, taking a look in. We would certainly prefer to be reporting on those key performance indicators that are really important to you, and providing a dashboard of that rather than an ongoing list of tasks that we worked on that month.
And if I may, and that's a fair comment, you spoke to operational sides. Quite often people will approach us with questions about operations, and it's not, I know oftentimes, and rather than give the standard answer of, I really don't know, oftentimes we'd see that in those reports. We'd say, oh yeah, the cemetery work is progressing this month, kind of thing, and we didn't know that unless you drive by the cemetery on a regular basis, for example. So it was just a thing that I really enjoyed. I'd hope to see it return, but I won't make it the hill to die on. But like I said, I really enjoyed that. Not to make any sort of input to operations or anything. I get that. That's not for us. But just to know what's being done, because oftentimes we implement stuff and then we don't know where it's at. Soccer pitches, for example. We didn't know at any one time if they were done or not done, but you can see on the monthly report, that they're 80% there, or almost ready, kind of thing. It was a really nice report.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was the idea of the performance measure indicators, is so we could have that type of input without necessarily having our senior staff go through less desirable task, is that a play way of putting it, of producing reports on a monthly basis that were not necessarily felt that they were utilized that much. I think was the thinking behind it. I know what you're getting at, but I think it's a wise idea for us to at least pursue this for a while and see how it goes first, and then perhaps make some changes and tweaks from there.
And that's fair. We haven't seen this before, so we'll see how that works out.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Okay, so I believe I was on alternate revenue sources, which is section 4.1.5. Here, as a medium priority item, you've identified the review and possible use of new offsite levies in response to changes in the Municipal Government Act. And we certainly have that targeted within the term.
I think we can all agree that this is a difficult one to quantify because the items, just by its very nature, I like the idea that the alternate revenue sources have been identified in here, although there was no specific examples, because by the nature there can be, otherwise we would be implementing them. But I think just to point out to the public at large that in fact it is an important directive of council to know that that is an issue, is important, and we went over a couple of positive items that have already been undertaken, and as those become opportunities in the future, I'm sure we'll be able to capitalize on more. So, I know it just looks odd when there's no direction specifically, but there really can't be. So.
Well, yeah, you could say provide regional utility services commissions, right? That is one we've already been able to capitalize on. Moving on to building capacity of section 4.1.6. We have as medium priority items plan for succession within city staff ranks and conduct reviews of compensation and the city structure. Any questions, comments there? Now moving into the sustainability pillar of the economy. Under stimulation of balanced economic growth, you've identified as a high priority item an increase to the city's commercial tax base, with the desired outcome of residential taxpayers providing less of the overall tax ratio than they currently do. And then a review of a marketing strategy for Len Thompson Phase 2. So this we did actually make a couple of changes here that I should highlight that didn't appear in the original draft. Here we have included the review of a marketing strategy specific for Len Thompson Phase 2, so that might be alternate sales models, alternate ways that we can move that land. And then we've also added in a consideration of a mechanism for paving the unpaved sections of Len Thompson Drive and 55th Avenue. So that's been a concern that individuals have had in the past, and so we wanted to look if there is a way to move that along. Any questions or concerns about section 4.2? Perhaps, as the chair has left, I'll pass it.
Thank you, CEO. I'm glad to see that we have this mechanism in here for trying to see what we can do about paving Len Thompson Drive. Just a word of, just for information, my broker, of course, is marketing those properties in Len Thompson, and he had a particular individual who was quite interested in purchasing a couple lots, but one of the reasons he was waffling because he said specifically it'd be nice if that road was paved. It would make those lots that much more attractive and more helpful for him. So I'm glad to see that they were taking a serious look at that finally to see what we can do there.
Forgive me, I was just adjusting the temperatures. 75 old school in here, so that's plenty. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. It was very cold in here. But anyhow, that's not part of this. Anyhow, my comment was about this annual symposium in terms of strategy with the city and the district Chamber of Commerce. I don't remember ever reading that on here. So what's that about? Was that added later? Because I should probably know this.
Under which item?
This is under, isn't that where we are right now? Yeah, it's C under the economic growth. Yeah, yes, thanks.
So that did appear in the first draft. No problem. And what we had seen it was just a continuation of our existing process where we celebrate some of the wins and state of the city that we have at the beginning of the year, and that we would remain committed to that. That's what we'll do. So, moving into marketing the city, we have review and update the community economic development bylaw as a medium priority item, with the goal of city staff and elected officials having the necessary tools available to market the city. So we have identified the update of the community economic development bylaw, the city of Lacombe attending more regional trade shows than we have in the past for the purpose of economic development, and then of course year-over-year growth in business licenses issued by the city.
Councillor Hoekstra?
Just, thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just another quick question there. How many trade shows have we gone to in the past? Like, 'cause
One, for sure.
was that local one or?
The local one.
Okay.
We haven't done a lot of attendance at previous trade shows because that wasn't part of the economic development focus at the time, I guess, or the paradigm at the time. Now on 4.2.3, healthy retail, which is page 16 of the document. Here as medium priority items, we've got increased public awareness of current retail options. Interestingly, this was actually something that came up during the mayor for a day with the grade 6s as well. They really thought this was something we should be doing. And then maintain an active partnership with Lacombe and District Chamber of Commerce. Okay. Support for events is item 4.2.4, and we've got a couple of initiatives there that would build support for events, with the measure of attracting at least one major regional event during the council term, and consideration of a policy to provide incentives for those regional type events.
So, while I don't think anybody would deny that's an important thing about our existing events, we don't speak to retention and supporting those successes that we have now. So I would like for it to perhaps be reworded a bit so that we're not, so it doesn't appear like we're turning our backs on them.
So we had certainly thought that building on those existing partnerships was acknowledging some of the existing successes we have, but maybe we should be talking, I think you're right, about attracting at least one new major regional event as opposed to, so we would certainly have that in.
Thank you.
Assuming the council's already.
Is that reasonable, everybody?
Number 4.3, which is sustainability pillar environment. We have improvement of city-owned walkways, and we did make a few changes here that we think better reflect council's desire. So originally, previously, the desired result spoke to encouraging accessibility through the use of para ramps when needed. The city of Lacombe has actually been recognized in the past for how committed we are to accessibility and bringing those para ramps in whenever we're doing projects. So we didn't think that was actually a strategic view here. And so we have changed it under the new one to have crosswalks, sidewalks, and trails in good condition. So part of that is what we've proposed is an active transportation plan that was also identified in the city's municipal sustainability plan that will identify trails, crosswalks, and various surface types throughout the city, so sort of the capital plan, and then also a crossing standards review, so saying what materials, what products should be looked at for crosswalks. Is there some alternate pilot projects that we could do with crosswalks, crossing lights, and protected crossings to see if there's something that would work really well here in Lacombe and have a high level of service for hopefully minimal cost. Any concerns with those changes? Moving to 4.3.2, green space preservation as medium priority item. Identified is ensuring that city bylaws pertaining to behavior in public places is current and well communicated. So really making sure through both on-site signage, city communications, that people are aware of the expectations within our public spaces, that being parks, as they relate to smoking, there's the upcoming marijuana, on or off leash dog park, perhaps a new location there to try and curb some of the problems that we're currently having with some of the behavior in our green spaces. Moving to 4.3.3, sustainable infrastructure. We have one of our biggest items, or that administration felt was one of our biggest items in terms of resource and capacity, which is the completion of an asset management plan. We have a review of the current solid waste management model, creation of a plan for the reclamation and reuse of our existing sewage lagoons, which of course will no longer be used once we're on regional sewer, or the majority of them will no longer be used. And I guess if there's any questions about those or comments, we have them.
Just a question, because it is an important one for our asset management plan. I was just curious whereabout we're at with the implementation of the new software to track. Has that been installed yet or purchased, or where are we at with that?
So for asset management, that is actually part of the stage 2, I believe, of the project. I think you may be referring to our operations and capital infrastructure tracking software, and that is currently ongoing. We have our operations budget within that software. We're expecting to have the 2019 budget within that software. We are trying to work with the supplier to get our 10-year capital plan into the software in time for presentation to council. I don't think they will have the capacity to get a 10-year capital in this year, so we are going to focus with them on our operations and capital, but it is ongoing.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll just actually, Director Thompson, is that right, that the purchase of the software for asset management is phase 2?
A part of the asset management strategy will lay the stepping stones towards improving our asset management system, and that will lay out, or we anticipate that will lay out when the appropriate time to purchase software would be. It is not specifically identified for, say, stage 2 or stage 3 or a specific year, but that would be fleshed out through the development plan strategy.
So on 4.3.4, we have economic prosperity, and the one and only under strategy here is to create a plan for underperforming city property. So again, this is one that was slightly changed from our previous plan. When we previously saw this, the performance measure was the creation of an inventory of underperforming assets within the city's register. We have changed that to be a plan to deal with some of those assets through either a plan of some kind.
I think that certainly better reflects the will of council. We were not interested in the list. We were interested in what we were doing about all this, so that's good news.
A list would certainly be easier, I will say, but I'm on to 4.4, which is page 22. We're in the sustainability pillar for culture, and so here you've identified the support for community groups to advance the arts in Lacombe, and the encouragement of community groups to develop alternate revenue streams to support their own activities within the community, both as medium priority items.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I had just a question about one of the strategies below there, that council considers a policy for funding partnerships with community groups. How will this be different than what we do through FCSS?
So FCSS does have a mechanism for funding community groups. Council also has a capital, there's a program called the Community Builder Fund, which is a capital partnering fund from the city to other community groups. That wouldn't be for operations, this would be more like the skate park or the Lapper group, that kind of thing. And so while that Community Builder Fund, I think, has been a great initiative, it has gone unfunded for a number of years. And so we want to look at whether or not that is really a viable method, because if we're not achieving the funding targets within that policy, then maybe we need to look at the policy.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor. These are not $300,000 in that fund, isn't it, through the Rink and Culture Board? So
I believe there was $150,000 in that fund.
Oh, that's when I started, it was higher. I got to see that change, so.
Thank you.
Welcoming inclusive community, under 4.4.2 on page 23 is the next item. Here you've identified the attendance and celebration of cultural events and historical milestones within the community as a medium priority item. And we've got a few measurable outcomes there. But if you have comments or would like to see change, we'd be happy to do so. Under 4.5,
Kind of formulated on this one here. I know we had discussed perhaps a more formalized method of working with our community nonprofit groups, Lions, Kinsmen, what have you. And I was just wondering how is that reflected in 4.4.2.
So I believe that that's reflected only in the council actively participating in historic and cultural events, although I believe there is under another section a council commitment to, whenever possible, attend community events and partner with community groups. But I am just trying to find it here and I'm not seeing it. So maybe why don't we, what would council like to see?
Just an example, I know that Director Ron had been inroads with several of the groups. Some of them at my request. Just it seems like a lot of our groups that do a lot of work in our community sometimes get left by the wayside. I mean, through no fault of theirs, certainly no fault of ours. It's just we need to have some kind of a formalized method to contact and keep our relationship active with these groups, even though some of them may not do anything we need to be involved with for several months at a time. We need to have some sort of methodology to keep in contact and update with them so that things don't get off the rails like they were with a couple of our larger groups here recently. So I don't know how we can work that, but we need to have some sort of a method in place. Councillor Ross?
I think Mayor Creasy, Director Ron has came to Lebanon and I think more than once and done kind of communicated, for example, playground initiatives, like directions on different areas within the city. So that has been done a few times. I know even, I think Sandy Stewart has also provided that information of like community initiative ideas, because at times we as Rotary Club or Kinsmen or Lions, they look for ideas, and the city's demonstrated some good thought into planning that way too. I think it's, well, it has improved. I guess it's maybe somewhat disheartening when some of them community groups build a facility and then it's tore down for other directions. That's probably a sore spot in the past, but you know, because that's, I guess, but that it is what it is in the past.
Councillor Collett?
I was just going to speak to 4.2.4a. It says build on existing partnerships with community groups and organizations, and then we have to attract events. That's under 4.2.4, but I think the gist of what you're referring to is kind of captured there, but it's talking about new events, but it's, you know, I think it's in here, but it needs to be cleared up a little bit.
So I think what I would propose, if there's general support, is that we would add an item here about formalizing, maybe it's a registry and an ongoing contact, a regular contact protocol with some of our community groups that are undertaking initiatives in the community. I think there's also an opportunity there, if you do have a formal process, that might help some of your overcommitments on committees that, in my opinion, the council is overcommitted on committees. And so some of those are certainly, I think, people have looked for council representation because they want to have that ongoing contact with council for their community group. And so if you have a formal process, you actually might be able to move away from some of that committee work. And go through more of the whole process. So
It sounds good from my perspective. See how council feels about it. I've seen a few thumbs up, so I think we like that direction.
okay, we will add that into the final draft. So on to 4.5 under sustainability pillar social. One of your commitments, your highest priority items, is the completion of a social master plan. We have the adoption of the social master plan being targeted for Q1 of 2020, which of course work would begin on it in 2019. Under 4.5.2, one of your high priority items, and we have undertaken some work, of course, on this already, is to review how well existing public transportation has been meeting demand and cost requirements of the city. Of course, you are looking to, we have received since this strategic planning session some very focused direction on that, and we will be meeting with the town of Blackfalds to undertake that governance review that was directed, I think this week actually, with the goal to bring back a potential governance model to council at a future meeting. On 4.5.3, community safety, we have explore train whistle cessation with all stakeholders. So we have identified there Lacombe Police Commission, Canadian Pacific Railway, the City of Lacombe, and any other stakeholders, with the goal not necessarily to achieve whistle cessation, because without knowing what the requirements are definitively, we don't know if that's achievable, but that at least the requirements for whistle cessation would be well understood and that cost would be well known. Under 4.5.4, renew the city's affordable housing strategy. So this is an update to the existing affordable housing strategy that's been targeted for Q1 of 2020. Again, of course, meaning that work will start in 2019.
Councillor Clark, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Of course, I sit on this committee, and of course, they're very thankful that this is going to be done. They're only not concerned, but they're wondering if there's a way that timetable can be pushed forward a year. They're not sort of in limbo, but the data they have, of course, off their current housing strategies of 2010. And they have some initiatives, as Councillor Hooster pointed out, there's an opportunity perhaps to partner with the Lacombe Foundation on a piece of property. But there's some hesitancy on the part of the Affordable Housing Committee because they don't know clearly what the needs are now. I mean, we've addressed a lot of them through Habitat for Humanity, Youth on Move, and so forth. So the hope was that maybe this could be considered in this budget cycle and have it rolled out for Q1 2019. Is this report done in-house, or did we hire a consultant last go around? I can't remember.
So we did have consulting support last time. My understanding actually is that there is some work being done by the Lacombe Foundation using their existing funds to evaluate the needs in the community in support of that Seniors Lodge application. Is that accurate or no?
I would have to ask, sorry. That doesn't sound like what I understood.
Well, and that may be, but this is a different issue. This is the Affordable Housing Committee, right? Affordable Housing Strategy. This is not just seniors, it encompasses the whole community, every facet, right? So yes, there's an ongoing issue there, but this is for the community as a whole, not just seniors.
So I think we could. I think it would be a challenge to move it forward a whole year to say Q1 2019. I think that would be tough to hit. But what we could do is have a review and see where we can fit it into 2019. If that council sees this as a real high priority, or a higher priority than it's been currently scheduled, then we can look at if there's some flexibility in some of our other areas, and then perhaps move a couple of things right.
Yeah, if we could just, it doesn't have to be Q1 2019, but if in 2019 it could be considered at least incorporated into this budget cycle, set aside those funds, and then hopefully in 2019 at some point that report can be compiled so that committee can get a better handle of where they want to go, because they do have some funds, roughly between 200 and 300,000, and that they'd like to allocate. And because there is a bit of a time crunch there too, some of the funding is tied to the province, and There's a time limit on it. Now, there's not to say that that money would go back to the province. Typically, the province doesn't ask for that money back, but you never know. So there's a bit of a time crunch on this, that some of that funding is set to expire. And so that's one of the reasons why they're hoping they can push it forward a little bit.
Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess I just have a question about like the compatibility between that initiative, the City's affordable housing strategy, and the social master plan. It seems to me that those are very connected items, and of course they're both scheduled for Q1 2020. So I'm just wondering, like, that seems like a good pairing, and it would seem a shame to now pull affordable housing and put that in front of doing the overall master plan. To me, it seems like those should go together. So if we're going to move up affordable housing, I would maybe perhaps suggest that, although social master plan is probably big, that would probably need to be moved forward too, because I think that would be an absolute crime, frankly, to do those separate. So.
Did you want to speak to that?
Well, again, they're two very separate entities. The social master plan is a very large, encompassing document that will include everything from housing, transportation, needs throughout the community. This is just specific to affordable housing. And again, there are some time constraints with the funding that that committee has. I would suggest they're two very separate things. We're just talking about affordable housing here, not the overall social master plan.
Thank you. Councillor Hoof, did you have something to add? Your light was on earlier. Did you have something to add or no?
No.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else, we'll proceed.
Okay, so we will look to, maybe if I could just ask for a little bit more direction on the target time, the affordable housing strategy. Just if there is a desire to have that linked with the social master plan or to move that into 2019.
So, in your opinion, CAO Gowdy, while I appreciate that the one is part of the other, is the social master plan a far more involved document than the other? Or is there some savings to be
So I would
realized by doing one with the other, or they have to be done concurrently, or what's the deal?
I don't think you'd see savings. I think that there is definite connections between affordable housing and social issues within a community. And so I agree that ideally those links are made in real time as those documents are done concurrently. I do think they can be done separately. I'm not sure that there would be a change in cost. Certainly the affordable housing strategy is going to be a much more focused and detailed report on affordable housing and how to deliver that $300,000 into the community for maximum benefit. Whereas the social master plan, I suspect, would be much broader, but less deep on each topic.
Fair enough, thank you. Councillor Hoekstra?
I would like to speak in, thank you, Mayor Creasy, in support of Councillor Connick, that housing right now too is quite a hot topic in the city. FCSS will probably be involved in the homeless count this fall too, so that would fit into the affordable housing initiative. But they're two separate things, but the information that we would get out of the affordable housing project or proposal would not be lost. It could just fit into the master plan, but they don't have to be tied. Whereas I would support the timing that Councillor Connick is talking about and suggest Q3 2019.
Okay. I guess, Councillor, to speak to your concerns, I don't think that it's necessarily a thing where we're sacrificing one for the other. We're not. I don't think that this is meant to delay the social plan by any stretch of the imagination. Is it not? It's not going to. So myself, I don't have any problem with expediting the housing needs one somewhat, and I don't know that we need to necessarily put a quarter designation on it, but if we can get it, if it's going to help that group out substantially, then I would suggest that the sooner that we can get it, the better, as long as it is not going to impact staff workload to the point where it becomes workable. I'm all for it. Councillor Connick?
I would just support that. And just again, because we've never done a social master plan, I envision that being a fairly large, I don't want to use the word beast, but I see it being quite a large undertaking, and I really don't want to link the two because one is fairly cut and dry, and I think again time constraints are such that I'd like to see the affordable housing strategy tackled a little quicker, whereas the social master plan I envision being something that will take a little bit of work, and I really hesitate to link the two together. So yeah, at any point in 2019, I think while they are linked, I think the affordable housing strategy, if we can get that process in 2019, that would be terrific.
So I think what we could do is potentially move that into 2019, and we'll take a look at some of your low priority items that we had some ongoing work on, and see if they can be shifted to provide us a little bit of capacity to expedite it.
Does that seem like a reasonable compromise? Councilors?
It's fine. My only thing is that usually you do a master plan first, you sort out your priorities, and then away you go. So it just seems like we're doing things backwards. I'm not suggesting that we delay the affordable housing. I'm suggesting that we move off the social master plan, and that is typically how things are done. But if council does wish to do it the opposite way, then that is their, ability to do so.
That's certainly a point well taken. One's going to have one of those necessarily opposite. It's just that some concerns with it never being done before. I mean, I can see that. I really haven't thought of that particular option. Councillor Collins, so thanks for bringing that up. But if there is a way that we can step up the housing one a bit, I'm suggesting that both seem to be for that.
And so I'm confident that we'll be able to shift some work around there. I am now on page 28, which is 4.5.5, future space needs. Here you've identified two medium priority items. Assess the need for future municipal facilities. So this would be related to both recreation facilities as well as emergency services provision facilities, as well as negotiate capital and operating requirements with potential regional partners such as businesses, municipalities, and school boards. So that's about the joint use planning agreements, of course, that are required by the province, as well as looking for any sort of E3 partnerships or revenue sponsorship partnerships that we may be able to get for our facilities. On to community access, 4.5.6. Here as a medium priority item, you have the creation of public Wi-Fi hotspots in the core of the city, and that is targeted. That we would do that review a little bit later in the term, targeted for Q4 2020. Emergency services is page 30, section 4.5.7. Here's a medium priority item. You have the review of a level of service and a creation of a plan for fire protection and emergency response partnerships. One of the things we've seen just very recently is that some of our emergency response partnerships are functionally operating quite well, but from a governance standpoint could use some clarification and just make sure that all of our partners are on the same level. And then of course, as the city continues to grow, our fire service is reaching the capacity of its current response time, and so we are going to need to look for new facilities and define a level of service that's acceptable for the community. Anything there? I am on to the last one, page 31, section 4.5.8, encourage volunteerism. So we did hear this quite strongly during our session, and so we have two items listed under here. We strongly support volunteerism as well as advertising volunteerism, partnering opportunities to build a growing sense of community.
Councillor Connick.
Just a quick word on this one. I think I look forward to seeing what kind of program we create, because I know, as Councillor Ross has alluded to, Lacombe Days is in dire needs and new volunteers. Rink has had the same core group for, dare I say, 20 years. So I really hope that, and these are the type of groups that are not high priority council committees, so to speak, but it's these groups that really, I hope that we work with and try to generate some new renewed interest in them because they need help.
Well, because we're talking about volunteerism, I would remind council that it's volunteers of distinction on Wednesday evening, as a side note. Councillor Hoekstra, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I guess, yeah, I had highlighted this too, because in reading the whole document and this being our strategic plan, I didn't see how this was new or or is this just new emphasis on it? I don't know. I guess I echo that idea of what is the new great way of finding volunteers.
So I don't think it is a new strategy. I think it is recognizing that this is a concern in our community, that we are hearing there needs to be some partnership for the promotion of volunteerism. I guess I just want to temper expectations that it's not going to be something that's necessarily city-led and fill the volunteer ranks to capacity. It's saying that in partnership with our local community groups, we're going to continue to try and build those ranks and build that capacity in the community.
I think that's a good point that you brought out, Councillor Hoekstra, that in fact there is nothing particularly new in this. I think by the simple fact that we're discussing it in chambers and we have an opportunity to have it live streamed to people out there that obviously are concerned about their community and talk about it, they recognize it is a concern because none of the events and programs in our community happen without volunteers, and hopefully more people will recognize that and step forward and put some of their time and efforts to good use for the citizens of Lacombe. So thanks for bringing that up. Councillor Ross, did you have something to add?
I guess I was just echoing, thank you, Mayor Creasy, Councillor Connick and Councillor Hoekstra. We've alluded to this in past and rec board as how do you be creative to try to bring like new energies into the community to contribute. I think some people get the impression that volunteerism is a full-time job. It doesn't have to be. Like I don't know how to try to have a solution, because it's just, it could be just a smaller task that alleviates it. It is difficult because it's repetitious. You're begging, you're pleading, and I think the perception even like Lacombe is everybody keeps expecting to be bigger and better. Well, we're a community of 5, and like we run around for 4 days as it is, and yet on social media and like people have this expectation that it just happens. They want it bigger, they want it better, they want more, and I don't know how you be creative to try to grasp for that few hours to take a task away. So it's repetitious, but it's an ongoing problem.
Well, once again, I think by us talking about it and suggesting things like that, perhaps we can get out there that there are specific duties and jobs that you can help with Lacombe Days or at any other festival. You don't necessarily have to step up and be a member of a board and go to meetings and whatnot, which quite frankly scares away a lot of people. That there are other items that can be done, so appreciate you bringing that forward.
Other than that, we have 2 appendices. One is the time communications process, and actually we do want to do a bit of a further review as we go through the graphic design process as how we're going to roll that out. Unfortunately, our communications coordinator was out of the office for a bit while we were going through this, so we'll work with Mr. Kumar to go through that, and then we have the creation credits. So both of these appendices will not appear in the publicly distributed documents. This is going to be publicly available, but most members of the public aren't that interested in the creation credits, for example. And that takes us to the end. Oh, sorry.
Just one suggestion. I know we've talked about it in the past. There was an awful lot of confusion with the colors that were chosen here. Having blue before it just seemed odd for most people, so I'd like to see those cleaned up for the final draft, please.
I can assure you that the final draft, the colors will be changed and it will be infinitely more aesthetically polished than what you're seeing here today.
So, Before Councillor Hoekstra, go ahead.
I can't believe that I wasn't going to talk much tonight. Anyhow, Mayor Creasy, what's this, the last document, that long one? What are we going to, what's the plan with that very long?
For the timeline chart?
Yeah, the timeline. It's not working for me, so I don't know. Is that going to be included in the?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that was purely an appendix to the memo, just if council was interested in how we had evaluated each task and how difficult or not we had seen it. It's certainly not something that we would distribute publicly. Again, if the public is interested, it is available for them to review on the agenda this evening, but we wouldn't include it with the final document.
Are the blocks kind of representative of time? Is that
Yes.
a little bit where you're going with? Okay.
Yes, they are. They're,
thank you.
Across the top, you can see the quarters, months, and so that's exactly what it is.
Perhaps you could include a second copy in Councillor Hoekstra's package. Councillor Connick?
Just real quick, are we doing, including a group photo or anything with this? There was some concerns with our current group photo that was not up to snuff.
Yes, we are. I have that scheduled, and I will be working with Devin to update a few photos, both with council and administration, that'll appear in the final document. And I think we have to do one for the wall also still.
So Council, just to...
Not if you don't want to. Twice a year.
Council, just a reminder, we've been through this several times now, so if there's anything that has been missed on here, it would certainly be an appropriate time to bring it forward.
So then I guess we would look for a motion adopting the strategic plan as amended this evening. I have gone through a couple of minor amendments that we were going to make, but I think they're fairly clear what council's looking for.
That's Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I would be definitely honored to make that motion, that council adopt the 2018-2021 strategic plan as amended.
Thank you. I think we've discussed it enough. All those in favor? Thank you. And so the next item up here is under financial services, is our corporate credit cards policy. And Acting Director Piché will take that, or CM handle that item, so thank you.
So this is actually kind of just a housekeeping item. 2 years ago, the city had adopted this corporate credit cards policy and at the same time created an administrative directive that actually laid out how the credit cards would be handled, how much each position would be, have a maximum limit on the credit card for that position. And then somehow when the policy was actually adopted, it also included all of the limitations of each position's credit card. So recently we ran into a relatively minor issue where the chief of police is frequently running into the limit of his credit card. I think it's $5,000, maybe $2,000 actually, $5,000. So we went to just change that in the administrative directive, which of course is an administrative function, and discovered that that list also appeared still in the old policy. So what we've brought before you today is something that is actually at a policy level. It does not include those administrative details like which positions have how much associated with them, which will make it much smoother for us in the future if we need to make changes.
I think that's a good route to go because I don't think the published amounts is really in anybody's best interest, and if they need to be adjusted as time goes on for whatever reason, it makes it much easier to do. So I think that's a good route. Councillor Connick?
And so I would make that motion that council approve the city's corporate credit card policy as presented.
Any additional comments? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And Next up, we've got our electricity request for proposal, and our acting director, Bichet, is going to handle that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. First off, I just want to make a change on the, I just noticed it as we were going here, on the subject. It is actually for the 2021, 22, and 23 years, not the 2019 and 2020 in the subject line up at the top. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of that. So what we're doing today is requesting council's approval to lock in the electricity prices for the city facilities for the years of 2021, 2022, and 2023. This recommended strategy will result in both cost certainty and a minimum estimated future cost reduction of about $55,000 each year for those 3 years from our 2019 and our 2020 current contract that's already been approved. In working with our Energy Associates International contractor, an RFP was posted on the Alberta Purchasing Connection to get indicative pricing and to do pre-qualifying for the suppliers. At the closing of the RFP, 3 vendors submitted bids that met the criteria of the RFP, and that was Direct Energy, Max Energy, and Capital Power. Eco Energy was provided with an RFP package, however, no submission was ever made. The 3 pre-qualified suppliers gave an average of approximately $44, and this is on average, of the $44.82 per megawatt hour, which is going to be saving, as I said earlier, about $55,000 per year from the 2019 and 2020 contract. Similar to how we did the natural gas contract back in the fall, the city and EAI will have to go to a live bid transaction where on a specific date and time, the pre-qualified vendors will submit a price transaction to look into the contract. We'll have roughly about an hour to decide and lock in the supplier's price. So at that point, we're looking for council to select the following electrical vendors to be as our preferred vendors of Direct Energy and Max Energy, Capital Power, and that council authorized the CAO to execute a 3-year electrical supply agreement with the start of a January 1st, 2021, based on the best pricing available to the city from the preferred vendors list. I'll take any questions.
Thank you for that, Director Bichet. Councilor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just throwing this idea out there, was it ever considered to go together on more surrounding communities to then therefore get more potential business, or is that too difficult?
I don't think it would be too difficult. We're already at a size where you're buying sort of like full blocks of power, if you will, and so adding on, say, the town of Black Falls, I don't actually think you would see any change in pricing. I think you're already at, unless you were able to get the city of Red Deer or some huge power user on, I think you're already seeing the lowest prices you'd be able to see.
Director Bichet, you had mentioned that you sent an RFP to Eco Energy and did not hear back from them. And I just don't want them to be portrayed in a negative light. So perhaps you could explain the reason why Eco Energy would not be interested.
Actually, I don't know the absolute reason why. We just did not receive a response back after we sent the RFP. I haven't had dealings with the parent company, which is UtilityNet, so I'm not 100% sure as to why. But no, it isn't meant as a negative.
Okay. Are you aware of any other commercial customers that Eco Energy has on?
It's all residential, is my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's an important consideration. CAO Gabi?
So UtilityNet is a smaller company than some of these larger 3 that have been recommended. They would have been competing directly with them, and so our expectation was that it would be difficult for Eco to offer competitive rates, given that they're competing, that their parent company would be competing directly with these large retailers.
Councilor Ross?
I think Mayor Creasy, I'll make the recommendation that council select the following electrical vendors as preferred vendors: Direct Energy, MX Energy, Capital Power, and the council authorize the CEO to execute a 3-year electrical supply agreement with start date of January 1st, 2021, based on the best pricing available to the city from the preferred list of vendors. Is that what you want?
I would just like you to state that it's a motion, not a recommendation.
My apologies, that's a motion.
Perfect. Any discussion on that? I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. And we have another one for Director Thompson on the pump house backup generator situation under infrastructure services and public works.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Earlier this year, the backup generator for pump house B suffered a catastrophic failure, rendering it immediately inoperable. The generator was purchased secondhand in the 80s and was at the end of its useful life. We had a number of contractors take a look at the generator, and we've had over the years more and more difficulty finding parts to repair it and maintain the generator. And the contractors who looked at the generator did indicate that it's virtually impossible to find parts for this unit to continue to repair it, and so it would need to be replaced. And so the administration identified the need to replace this generator as well as the pump house A generator, which is the same age, in the 2019 and 2021 10-year capital plan. However, due to its failure this year, administration is recommending its replacement in 2018. Based on quotes, the cost to repair or replace the pump house B generator is $111,000, plus the cost of an interim rental generator. Overall, we're projecting this replacement to come under the 2019 budgeted amount. Administration is also requesting council approve a variance to their purchasing policy to facilitate this expenditure through a quote process rather than a tender process. And moving forward, looking at the replacement of pump house A, the pump house A generator rather, we are investigating the use of alternate power sources, including the use of a Tesla power bank battery, which is described in the memo a little bit. There are advantages and disadvantages of using such a system, which we are currently exploring, and we hope to have a better understanding of this type of system before making a presentation to council on which we should go forward with. So in the short term, we are recommending that council approve the purchase of the backup generator for pump house B.
Thanks, Director Thompson. I'm just curious, is there maintenance issues with that Tesla backup system?
That would be a part of our review to understand what the ongoing cost would be, the life cycle cost of such a system. Some of the initial advantages are that it can be powered through, say, green power sources. So if we had a solar panel or if we were to purchase green power from the grid, it can be used to offset the cost of the generator itself. Initial disadvantages being it has a finite runtime. So if we said it can operate for 2 or 3 days, after that, what happens? And so right now with the generator, with diesel power, we just continue to fill up the fuel tank and keep going. But so those are the kinds of things we want to get a better understanding of.
And as much as I appreciate being proactive and coming up with alternate uses for that, given how infrequent the usage of these items are, I'm not particularly sure that we need to be involved in new technology on a backup system for something that is so critical as water in our community. That's just my thought, but I'm kind of a tried and true thing approach in that particular area. But CAO Gowdy?
So we also are highly concerned about risk with the water system. One of the reasons that we would be willing to look at it here is because we do have the 3 different pump houses And so we would still have sort of traditional generators housed at each of our other pump houses, both of which would have the capacity to run our system, the entire city's system, from a water pressure standpoint, in terms of if there was a failure of the pump house 8 testing system.
Councillor Cox?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. So I'm just looking for clarification. So A and C can cover off B, but can B and C cover off A? Did you just say that?
Yes.
Oh.
The city has 2 pressure zones. There's a low pressure zone, which is powered by pump houses A and B. Pump house B actually provides very, very little of the city's water capacity and pressure capacity within the city. Pump house C provides, both in terms of reservoir capacity and pumping, probably twice the combined capacity of pump houses A and B combined. So C is certainly our newest and most powerful pump house and could easily run the whole city if A and B went down. Where you would run into problems potentially is if you had multiple fires or long-standing, like an ongoing fire that required, say, 5 or 6 hours of firefighting capacity. That's where having only one pump house would be a challenge.
Okay, because I was trying to, when I was reading this, I thought, well, why are we doing pump house B, replacing the backup there when we should be doing pump house A, because pump house A supplies more of the water, but you're saying that any one of them can cover off. It seemed to me when I was reading this that B could not cover off A.
I don't think B can't, I would say B cannot cover off A. Sorry, B could not cover off C. So the low pressure zone, if pump house A went down and pump house C went down, pump house B, which is the one by the hospital, would not have the capacity to power the whole city. That would be a real challenge.
Okay, I'm not trying to confuse this issue, but when I was reading this, I thought, well, why are we doing A? If A is this, A hasn't failed yet. It would seem to me more important to do A than to do B. Yet you're suggesting we do B and still run this, or have this old one in A yet, which is more important pump house. So to me, it did make sense, but.
Councillor Jacobson?
Sorry, I feel like an idiot here, but I just need some clarification. So the alternative emergency power system, that's for discussion down the road? Is that, okay, so this is not a red herring hanging over here to confuse me, hey?
It wasn't our intent, but if that's what has happened, I apologize.
Okay.
Councillor Gullikson?
Is there a need for this in B? If it's covered off by A and C anyway? Are we, and B cannot support any of the other systems anyway?
So it is best practice to have a backup generator in place in these pump houses. We would definitely recommend including some level of backup. We had talked about whether or not there was a legitimate need to have a rental generator at B in the interim, but given the age of pump house A and its chance for failure, we did say having 2 working and operational generators at all times is something that, for us, is a minimum standard.
But the B generator only does the B area, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So it has no support to the other areas at all?
Not from an electricity standpoint, but from a water standpoint, yes, it doesn't provide a substantial portion, but it is still a significant component of the system from water, but it does not provide electricity to any of the other systems. The generator will not.
Councillor Hoekstra?
Can I speak to the second part of this recommendation about the variance to the purchasing policy?
You certainly can.
I just would like to know why. Why is that? At least I missed the why. Is there a why?
Director Thompson?
Sure. So when the generator failed, we brought in a number of contractors who specialize in generator repair and generator supply, and they became very familiar with our system and what the issues were, and so we worked directly with them at the time to get quotes as quickly as we could, and these are the quotes reflected in the memo today. Certainly we could pause that and go out to a competitive bid, but we do feel these are qualified contractors that know our system and are able to supply what we need. And so that's why we they're requesting the variance, the policy in this case.
So just to be clear, normally with an expenditure of this amount, it will go to tender to several different companies, but for the reasons that you have stated, you're recommending that in this particular case that we bypass that, correctly?
That is correct. And normally when we plan a project, especially when it reaches council's policy currently is $75,000 or higher, for purchases of that magnitude would go out to a tender process. And certainly if it was a planned project, we would have planned to go through that process. In this case, it was an unplanned failure. The project was slated, I think this one is actually slated to be done in 2021. And Pump House A was slated for replacement in 2019. And so because of that, it was more urgent for us to get some pricing in and move forward with getting a replacement generator as soon as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Hibbs? Did you have something? That was the same question. Very good. Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Is there any advantage to replacing both generators at one time, cost-wise?
There may be some shifting advantages in terms of bringing the generators in. We'd have to evaluate the capacity of the Pump House A generator, but that's something we would have to explore. But before council tonight is the single purchase.
So we would entertain a motion if everybody's satisfied with the discussion so far. Councillor Hoekstra?
I'll do that. I'll move that council approve the replacement of the backup power. Oh, there's numbers in here again. Anyhow, the backup power generator at Pump House B and the interim rental of a standby generator for 2018 for $126,160 plus GST funded by the Water Reserve.
Thank you for that. Any other input on that particular motion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Yes. And anybody else? Councillor Hoekstra?
And that we move that council approve the variance to the purchasing policy to facilitate this expenditure based on a quotation process rather than a tender process.
Not seeing any lights, I'll call the question on that motion as well. All those in favor? Thank you. And the next item up here, we've got a board appointment for Lacombe District Recreation, Parks and Culture Board.
So before council this evening is recommended approval of one new term appointment for a citizen at large position on the Lacombe District Recreation, Parks and Culture Board. This is in line with the procedures for your citizens at large positions. Filling this vacancy will provide a full 6 members on the board. Yes, that's true. 6 members on the board, and Mrs. Diana Weeb is the recommended applicant. Now, her resume is available to you in camera. Excuse me, but she has been recommended by the board as well. All but one member who felt that the term should line up with his term. Specifically, this individual had been replacing someone who had resigned from the board, and so he took on the term that they had. And then similarly, Mrs. Diana Weeb is taking on the term from someone who resigned from the board. And so we try to get those terms to line up so that they're not all coming due at the same time, so there's some continuity in their staggered. So we're certainly recommending that you do appoint Ms. Diana Weeb as the public member for the Parks and Culture Board.
Thanks for that. I guess I'm just a little lost. I mean, it's not up for current board members to pick and choose the appointments. They are made fully aware of the time, not the time commitment, the duration of the commitment when they sign up, are they not?
They certainly are. In this instance, the individual called a number of our administrative staff to request that this be brought up this evening, that he was not in support due to that, the terms. So I'm just providing that information for you.
Thank you. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy, to elaborate more on that. I was also one of those individuals, but the person that has the concern replaced my term because I was on Parks and Recreation Board, which then being successful at the election, I was then replaced by this individual. This person replaced my term. So he's fulfilling the obligations of the term that I was committed to the rec board. So that is how, and the terms are differentiated so that the rec board does not have several members at once. Terms up, it's staggered for convenience of replacing. So I spoke to this individual and said that is how his position became, and it's not an issue as far as that I was concerned. So that's how. Anyways,
appreciate the background. Councillor Jacobson.
Oh, I was just going to follow up and say, yeah, this individual has been explained why, and there's absolutely no issue anymore.
Very good. Perhaps someone would like to make a motion. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make the motion that council appoint Miss Diane Weeb as public member to the Lacombe District Recreation Parks and Culture Board for the term ending December 31st, 2019.
Very good. All those in favor? Thank you. I'm sure that if she doesn't know about it already, that administration will be contacting her shortly. It is 7:17. What if we take a short recess and have an opportunity to speak with the press if they so choose, and we will get underway again at 7:30. Fair?
want to say that, but between us,
Okay, everyone, it is nearly 7:30, so we'll reconvene. And we are at the reports, everybody's favorite portion. I'm going to go first because mine's really in depth. If I can find it, you put it in? Ah, I'm done. Who's next? Councillor Gullickson?
I'm ready. Well, nobody wants me to report on this, obviously. They keep saying just do as is, but as presented, I should say. But I will do some details. May 31st to June 3rd, we attended the FCM conference. I did a number of put in a number of study tours and sat in on a number of sessions. Overall, I thought the conference was had a lot of great information and good people, and was worthwhile on not an annual basis for all councillors, but certainly each councillor should have an opportunity to attend it because it's a very interesting format, and you meet a lot of interesting people from all over the country. Certainly learned some things about how they govern, and there's certainly other models out there other than our own. So that's something to consider maybe down the road for Alberta, you never know. Found out some interesting things regarding cannabis, one of them being that Manitoba made some decisions that were really made for the municipalities. They don't even have to make a decision, it's already done for them. So there was some really good information for us on a number of different topics, so I would recommend it for all of us to attend at some time. Helped out at Tim Hortons Camp Day fundraiser. I was there with Councillor Ross, and all of a sudden, all I knew, he's in the corner visiting, and I sold all the bracelets. So, what a surprise. I attended an NPC meeting, one item on the agenda for variance of the size of a freestanding sign, and this was approved with conditions. So, and the other two items on there shouldn't have been there, they're from the previous month. So if there's any questions regarding my report, I'll answer them now.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I was unable to get my report in time, so more in-depth report next time.
Nice try, that was my story. Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Actually, not quite ditto. I wasn't actually sure I was going to make it to this meeting, so I thought it would be silly to submit my report and actually not be able to take any questions. So look forward to that at our next meeting.
Councillor Ross?
Was Lacombe's meeting. We're still planning events. No, we will not be able to shoot at a too difficult to find location. Volunteers, insurance, and so forth. The airport didn't cooperate with giving us that option, and there also was, as of yet, no Saturday morning parade breakfast. So that option is available if anybody wants to use it for a fundraiser as well. So, and like I said earlier, still looking for volunteers, and I'll volunteer for Tim Hortons Kids for Camp, as Don stated, but I did sell some. So, anyways, I don't talk all the time.
So So,
In a coffee shop.
Councillor Ross, did the airport representatives state a reason why they were not interested in participating in that event, or?
It's stated that in the, specifically with the lease within the city of Lacombe, is that the airport strip is not to be used for anything other than aviation purposes. So in question of that, we did contact CO Gowdy. We're looking at that lease, and also on the airport committee, we have a meeting community coming up here this month, and so there's some differences of opinions, because I think in the future they're going to be wanting some financial support for their runway, and in my opinion, I think that is a facility that could be utilized more within the community, because it is still a city property. So we had some interesting differences of opinions, so I'll keep it to that.
CO Gowdy?
I just want to reiterate that we are, for Councillor Ross, we are looking up that information. We do owe you that information. We'll get it to you well ahead of your meeting.
Great, thank you very much.
Perhaps you'd like a copy of the Alberta transportation letter to take with you to your meeting. Might be of interest to them as well. Councillor Jacobson.
Yeah, so on May 29th, I attended the Cannabis Cafe Let's Talk session at the LMC. I would like to point out that I was thrilled to receive my first trigger warning and safe space debriefing offer. Being thoroughly assured that my feelings would be attended to as we continued. It was interesting to see that even those who opposed cannabis legislation and consumption were actually very in favor of our cannabis committee proposals once they were explained. And the zero public consumption idea was actually quite popular. I attended the Heritage Resources Committee meeting on June 7th, and the big takeaway from that is our summer student has been hired, and this summer student is going to create a database of citizens of Lacombe who are interested in staying engaged, and these are citizens who have heritage homes. And again, the reason for this is we'd like a way to directly communicate with the 25 to 50 or so citizens who, and let them directly let us know what workshops and that kind of thing put on. So this is actually pretty important. And according to our chair anyway, it's going to cost us $300. So that's money pretty well spent, I think, for 10 weeks of summer student work. So that's pretty good. Echo Lacombe is quickly becoming my favorite committee because we had our meeting at Blind Man Brewery, and I sampled many different flavors. I think the city of Lacombe should consider having council meetings of Blind Man, and I think the debates would be much more boisterous if we could follow this. I don't know if that violates any sort of act that did that, but whatever, I don't care. So there was a $7,500 grant approved for the blacksmith shop at the museum for renovation effort underway there. Actually, the big top of the evening, and this kind of ties into some of our strategic plan things, is the idea of a business incubator. Now, Echo's been shooting or kicking around this idea of a business incubator for a long time, longer since before I was there for sure. And the whole idea, they wanted to partner with several universities in the area, Berman and RDC, and they wanted like a bricks and mortar type incubator space. And so it was brought up in the meeting that maybe this is just this idea just isn't going to fly because perhaps the traffic isn't there in Lacombe to create bricks and mortar incubators. So the idea was maybe we should start having thought about an online business incubator, so a space that has all the infrastructure for entrepreneurs coming and get online in a commercial capacity, have the resources there for bookkeeping, commercial advising, that kind of thing, and really float an incubator that way. I think it's a great idea because obviously we're tapping into a market of billions of people as opposed to just 13,000 at home here. And I think the exponential potential for the benefits that can create are much bigger than a bricks and mortar solution, and it can be much more cost effective just to get up and off the ground, right? So that is something I'm quite interested in, and I'm interested in see what comes further from that, and maybe how that can tie into what we're doing with our strategic plan. And I would like to encourage the CEO and the mayor to invite the gentleman who runs the Echo Honey program to come here and present to us. This is, the more I learn about this is just the most amazing thing that this high school teacher has got underway in Lacombe here. So much so that the University of Pennsylvania has called and asked for details on what they're doing here, because it's like a only in North America program that's happening here. So it's quite inspiring to hear what this gentleman is doing, and he'd be very happy with some of the students to come and share them what they're doing. So I'd encourage you to get him on the agenda if possible.
I'm thrilled to hear that kind of support for the beekeeping program, because it is something that we are actually dealing with right now. We've had a couple of relatively minor complaints about bees in the community. So we are looking into it right now. I am very happy to hear that there's some support for that, because we also are excited about the program.
For those individuals that were wondering what all the buzz was about, we'll send them your way. No, I think that's a great idea. Why would it bring forward it? Yeah. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy, and thanks to Ross for getting my report in there. Who knew that we can't send little messages from our iPads? It doesn't come through. Anyhow, see, just want to say there it was, really. I made my report at home and forgot to email it, and then I couldn't email it from my iPad. So I too went to the cannabis talk. That was quite an interesting evening. Just to add to what Councillor Jacobson was saying, I just looked around the room and there weren't a lot of regular citizens in the room, if that's a fair way to assess that evening. I was thinking that there would be more concerned citizens or interested citizens, but it was primarily professionals, community leaders, medicinal marijuana users, and wannabe cannabis retailers in attendance. That was kind of who was there. But great discussions and quite a, yeah, it was still an evening well spent. On June 2nd, I went to the 80th anniversary and reunion luncheon from the Lacombe Lions Club. Another really fun event, actually. You hang out with all these Lions people and they love their organization, but they're an aging organization, so it ties right in with the whole volunteering thing. I was really appreciative of finding out exactly what the Lions have done in Lacombe. They provided cooking and serving equipment at the Michener Park at their concession. They have provided money to the Lacombe Hospital for a pain management program. And Lacombe is the only hospital outside of Edmonton and Calgary that has this program. Who knew? And the Lions contributed to that. And then of course, as part of their 100th anniversary of Lions Club International, they partnered with the city to install the Crana Lake fountain. They also collect used eyeglasses, and I have a box at home now that I'm going to give to them to distribute to developing countries. And they seek to partner with the city in the future to plant trees where needed. And I'm trusting that. Have you not heard about that, CEO Gowdy? Or sorry I saw your reaction, but.
Sorry, I believe Mr. Van has mentioned that to me and
okay.
On a couple of times, and I was just thinking, oh yeah, I forgot you wanted to.
Okay, yeah. Very interesting meeting him too that day. But I was quite happy to be at that event, so thank you, Councillor Connick. On June 5th, I attended the Lacombe District Chamber of Commerce Board meeting. The Chamber had a very successful trade show, bringing businesses and citizens together, making about $32,000 for the Chamber. I found out at this meeting that probably 4 or 5 years ago, the Chamber was always running at a deficit. So they are very happily in a good place financially, and when you have a trade show like that, that really serves the Chamber well. They've received about 8 applications for their scholarship, so they're happy about that, but also it's easier to pick between 2 applications. And they have a subcommittee that's planning their awards gala that will be on October 20th, and they are hoping that the sound system works well. Councillor Gullickson was there for the last one. And then lastly, I see that, I just noticed it tonight that you... okay, I'm not supposed to... I worked for I did a few things for the City of Lacombe on administrative duties, so...
Thank you for that. Like I said, my apologies for my report. Believe it or not, I didn't do a condensed one for today, but in all honesty, my FCM report was not completed, so it didn't form part of it. One item that I did want to bring up was attending the Central Alberta Mayor's Caucus prior to leaving, and we had an interesting proposal from, if memory serves me correctly, Constable Ian Isle, I think his name is. I'll have that to you next report period. And he went on to outline a very worthwhile new facility in Red Deer called the Children's Advocacy Center, AC, and they have taken a holistic approach to a very severe and growing problem in, not specifically just in Red Deer, but all of Central Alberta. They've taken an extremely large area from border to border, and I believe north to Leduc and south to Olds area, I think, something in that scope. And they take a holistic approach to dealing with situations where children are in abusive homes and that type of thing. It involves law enforcement, FCSS, psychologists and therapists of various kinds and whatnot. So it's a very exciting new thing that I will be discussing with our chief of police. I expect he's very well aware of it now anyway, but something that we'll certainly be involved in. And they're housed in a building in downtown Red Deer at the moment, and they have plans to build, I believe it's an $8 million facility on the campus of Red Deer College. And the timeline escapes me, I think it was within the next 2 years. So pretty exciting stuff and very useful programs for some compromised individuals that need help. So that was the one item that I have from memory other than the FCM stuff, which I'll go over next report period. So thanks everybody for putting their reports together. I believe, Gotti, did you have anything you want to go over with your report? Albert?
Just I have an in-camera report.
Okay.
That's the last for this.
Very good. I think that we had a motion for that. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, someone we accept the council department reports as information.
Thank you for that. All those in favor? Thank you very much. So, next item up here is in camera. Councillor Hibbs?
I would so move that we go into camera.
And the time is
7:47.
7:47. Thank you for that. All those in favor? Thank you.